All right. So we are at Ruttkowski68 with Leo Fitzpatrick, and we are at the Larry Clark Show. Leo. And Leo curated the show, and basically this is a collection of Larry Clark's photographs, 92 to 95.
Yep.
And tell me how this show came about.
It really just kind of like came together last minute, like within the last month or two.
Okay.
Basically, they had asked me to organize something, and I came up with like a million ideas.
So something not Larry Clark, just anything?
Just anything.
Okay, great.
And then, like slowly over time, all those ideas like didn't seem that interesting to me. And I was like, oh, you know, I just really want to see photography.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the one thing that I felt was missing in the art world. Everything's like figurative painting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I just want to look at good photos. And so I had some other ideas with maybe like Marielle and Mark Streetwise series, or Jim Goldberg Raised by Wolves,
Sure.
like things like that. And then when it kind of came down to it, I was like, why don't, you know, this might be the last show I ever curate. Like I don't really do gallery stuff anymore. I was like, why don't I do a show? If this is gonna be my last show, why don't I do it with the guy who got me into all this?
Wait, why do you say your last show?
You know, you just have a feeling. You're just like, I don't know if I really want to do this.
Okay.
But I was like, if I'm gonna not do this anymore, why not do a show with the guy who got me into this whole thing?
Okay.
And so I've been visiting Larry, and Larry's getting older, and I literally just like saw all this work sitting in his apartment, framed, and I was like, dude, let's
framed.
So even saying curated is kind of crazy. Like I just organized.
Yeah,
it.
gotcha.
Because he had done this show in 1996.
Right.
And there's like installation photographs. So even the way the show is laid out, I just like kind of followed the blueprint.
And this was what, International Center for Photography, or the Whitney?
This was Loring Augustine.
Loring Augustine, all right.
Which is the gallery that represents Larry.
Okay. Yeah, super interesting. So what's your relationship to this gallery?
They were curious about what I was doing at Public Access. And I think on Instagram it looked really exciting. But in real life you realize it was like...
No, that's not true.
It was just not like a real business. It was like an interesting gallery, and you know, I wanted to feel more like a skate shop and a hangout.
Yeah, yeah.
But that doesn't last long in New York City.
Yeah,
so they were kind of like sort of asking me if I would come maybe help them out here, because they were a German gallery. They didn't have too many connections to New York.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, like that's not, this feels like sleeping with somebody else's girlfriend. Like I knew my space so intimately, to take on a bigger gallery was kind of, I don't know if intimidating is the right word, but I was like, this almost feels like kind of going corporate, whereas what I did was more like a project.
Gotcha.
So I said, I don't think working together would be right, but I'll do something.
Okay, but you've curated plenty of other things prior to this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had my own gallery for like 12 years.
So it's not a crazy leap into some foreign world.
Not at all, no. And it's like, I know that I can organize interesting things.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just wish a 27-year-old would do it. I don't know why I have to do it. Like, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
all right, quickly tell me, you just said a lot of people think that the show is called Us, but it is actually, explain that.
Yeah, so it's basically Larry Clark US, because it's a German gallery, so they represent a lot of artists from Europe and stuff.
Gotcha.
And so this is just kind of stating that Larry Clark is an American artist.
Okay, now when you just mentioned that Phil Frost had a show here prior to this.
Yeah.
Did Phil have US?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all right, great. All right, cool. Let's quickly jump into the show here. Pretty much, you walk into the gallery, and it's like you get this. Obviously, that there's how many photographs is it?
I want to say 79 photographs.
Yeah. All right, so this is like a good chunk of. Now, I'm assuming, and I know a little bit about this show and Larry's work, but this is basically Larry turning up at the banks. Now, I will also point out, you had also said off camera that the majority of these photographs, a lot of them are shot at the banks, the contest, April of '93, and Larry turns up with his camera, and it's kind of like he's almost like scouting for the film he's going to make, which is Kids, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. At that point, Larry had already been around the skateboard scene. And yeah, like he'd already kind of been hanging around Washington Square Park and photographing kids there and stuff. And the contest was so chaotic. Like, I don't think you really would notice a 50-year-old guy with a camera taking pictures. Yeah. Because there was a lot of photographers and people like kind of documenting things. Sure. And so it wasn't that unusual. Like, I mean, like Deee-Lite was there and stuff. I remember. And so it's it was like such a weirdly unique day. Yes. That I don't think Larry would have stood out. Yeah. The only reason I remember that day is because I like broke my board, and then we went back to Larry's house. He gave me like a Ronnie Bertino like think board or something. Wait, okay, hold on. How did you end up going, like, so did you meet Larry before this? Yeah. Okay, how did you meet him? I don't know. Did you know Harmony prior to all this? No. Okay, so man, that's a crazy one. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. For some reason, I remember Larry living like right down the street here on Walker or White or one of these streets. Yeah. But this is at the Banks, and you go all the way back to his house during this contest? Or during this whole... I think like right after. Okay. But it was with Tobin and probably Julian Stranger. Okay. And Andy Roy, definitely. Okay. Maybe Cardiel. Wow. Or something like that. And they're like... I'm like 14. I'm like, you know, super small. Yeah, and these are, I might want to point this out. Those three people that you just mentioned, including Tobin, were well-known names in the skateboard world, and all of a sudden you're with these 3 or 4 guys, and you're like, probably, this is crazy. 100%. Because, and I will also say this, at this point, it was crazy to have this many pro skateboarders in New York. Yeah. At one point, at one time. Oh yeah, and especially guys like Danny Way and Colin McKay. These are like Michael Jordan and like, you know, Scottie Pippen. Yeah, and again, like that day was just so weird and magical. And, you know, you can go into the fight and all that, and even like this weird contest and Vinny Raffa handing out beers, and it was just so it was crazy. Almost chaos. And there's an interview I did with Larry and Tobin where I kind of was thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, I probably had to go to school the next day. Like, how do you go back to like normal ass New Jersey? You don't. I mean, you do, but yeah, you're of another, you've been kind of indoctrinated into this whole other. And I don't know why, I mean, I feel like I was a shy kid. I don't know why I would have asked Larry for a board, or if he just mentioned, because he was getting boxes, I think, from like Greg Carroll and stuff. And that's crazy. So he was like, hey, I got a board at my house if you need one, or something. And I was like, okay. But like, that's pretty random for like a 14-year-old kid. Yeah, well, maybe he just saw that you had a broken board and he's like, well, but you know, like, definitely the fact that he was with Tobin and those guys, that was like a sign that he's legit. Yeah. Okay, really quickly, how did you break your board? No idea. No idea? I just focused it. Oh, okay. I don't think I was like killing it. Okay, now tell me how, you had mentioned a story of how Larry gets in with this crew of people, and that's through Tobin Yelland. Yeah. Okay. So basically, Larry gets invited to do this Ansel Adams photography workshop somewhere in Northern California. Okay. I'm not really sure. And Larry goes, and it's just kind of like for a check, you know, it's like, no one's there to like photograph photos like Tulsa or Teenage Lust. Yeah. They're just like, he says they're like middle-aged ladies who just want to like learn how to shoot a good still life photograph. And then 18-year-old Tobin Yelland. This is in 1988. Crazy. So when Larry goes back to New York, Tobin starts sending him photos, kind of like, and they would do like phone critiques where like they would call each other and he'd say, yeah, this photo's interesting. And then Larry's sort of like, what happens when you guys aren't skateboarding? Like, I need to see everything. Yeah. And then Larry starts going to California to hang out with Tobin, and like, it's like Mickey Reyes and Cory Chrysler and all these kind of like Archimedes, the whole EMB
crew.
Yeah, but Larry, he's like, oh, these guys are like, they're scary. They're interesting.
Yeah.
And so, like, Larry was obsessed with Cory Chrysler and Karma.
And Karma. Oh, wow.
Like, because he was like, they were so fucking angry.
Yeah.
Like, they were like powder kegs ready to go off. And so Larry started like interviewing them on like video. And he was going to make this movie Ken Park. That was supposed to be his first movie.
How did he know? I mean, I can only imagine how, I know how he knows who Ken Park is, but I wonder how Larry, who's not a skateboarder, gets fixated on Ken Park, which is the furthest thing from this street savvy crew of people.
I would imagine at that time it wasn't called Ken Park.
Okay, got you. Okay.
But
eventually
it was all Visalia. It was like Richard and Jesse Paez, and like it was all that vibe. You know, that like kind of like consolidated.
Yeah. Almost like, I don't want to call them like Hicks, but it's like that's not SF. The Visalia scene is not SF.
Yeah, so it was this weird combination, and it was all like kind of via Tobin, and so, but they would go like San Diego, I guess, and LA a little bit, but I don't even know if those scenes were really like as interesting as like what was happening.
So this is, all right, I just want to point this out, that 88, 89 to this, 93, is a significant, and especially there's complete insanity in terms of change happening in skateboard world. This is like a huge, like, wild time for tricks and, you know, whatever. But so this is a pretty long-standing relationship with Tobin that leads up to this show.
Larry's already in it 5 years.
I had no idea about that.
And so basically, I think when Tobin was like kind of coming to the East Coast, it's probably around the time like where like Jeff wrote for Underworld Element, and like that time period. So now Tobin's introducing Larry to like New York skaters. And the reason Larry never made Ken Park is because he couldn't write a script. He didn't know how to write the script.
Fascinating.
But through the New York skaters, he met Harmony.
Okay, gotcha.
And he's like, and so at that time, they were giving away tons of like free condoms. Remember, they would be like just a strip. And so all the kids were kind of like wearing them, like as like necklaces.
Totally.
But you had all
these
conservative people like being like, "How you can't give kids condoms? That's promoting sex." Blah blah blah. And Larry's like, "Oh, this is like interesting, like this weird that was so controversial to promote safe sex." And so like basically that gave him the storyline for kids. And he was talking to skaters, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we wear condoms." And then in reality, they'd be like, "No, we don't wear condoms. We just have sex with virgins or try to."
Right.
So between the fight at the Banks contest and that, and like what Larry had just been observing between like kids' relationships with their parents and the skateboarding subculture, Larry's like, "There's a movie here. I'm just gonna take everything I learned in the last like 5-6 years and jam it into a 24-hour period to make the movie like exciting."
Gotcha. Okay, I have a confession. I've never seen the movie Kids.
That's awesome.
Never saw it. So now, who, as I understand it, Harmony wrote the screenplay for, but you're saying that Larry has kind of like this overarching idea.
Larry gave him the plot, and he said, "Run with this."
Okay, gotcha.
And it needs to happen within 24 hours. And Harmony
needs to happen. Oh, the film needs to happen over 24 hours.
Yeah, Harmony wrote the film in 3 weeks, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But Harmony was 19. He was super ambitious and super smart.
Yeah.
And like, you know, he knew how kids talked, and he knew how. And you know, think about like, Justin is Justin, Harold's Harold.
Yeah.
Steven in the film was supposed to be Stephen Callis, but he got locked up on the way to the audition. So like, you know, a lot of it was like already there.
Yeah.
And I think like me and Chloe were the only two like randoms.
Yeah.
And then Rosario, they saw on like a fire escape.
Okay, quick one. Benny, a friend of mine from Flushing, told a wild story not too long ago about Harmony moving from wherever he's from somewhere.
I think like
down
Tennessee
south.
or something.
Yeah, Tennessee. Moves to Flushing because I think Harmony's grandmother lives in Flushing.
Yeah, he was going to NYU and living with his grandma.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Harmony's pretty quiet or misleading about what his parents do. But I think he grew up in a really cultured house.
Yeah.
And was really smart and hip to filmmaking.
Sure.
Much more than any of us other kids, you know. And I'm pretty sure knew who Larry Clark was, which nobody else did.
Right.
You know, and like, the reason Larry, like, he was kind of able to fly under the radar because nobody knew of his earlier work. And so nobody had any judgments. Whereas it's kind of like a famous story, Quim Cardona was originally supposed to be Telly in the film, but his mom knew about Larry's work and was like, nope.
Yeah, I heard that she also read the script and kind of was like,
yeah.
You know, which is interesting.
Because I would imagine, I think Kim's younger than me, or Quim.
Yes. Just for the record, when we were younger, we referred to Quim Cardona as Kim. That's what K-I-M. And we always thought his name was K-I-M, but then all of a sudden, it was short for Joaquin or whatever. Yeah. So anyhow.
But so I turned 17 while we were making the film. And so my mom had to sign off on it. I would imagine Quim was probably 16. I feel like he's like a year younger than me.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and he was also he was a small dude, like,
yeah,
they were like little kids,
His mom would have definitely had to sign off.
Now his mom, if I'm not mistaken, grew up in either Manhattan or Brooklyn. And they moved out to Scotch Plains, Jersey, whatever.
Yeah.
But we also, the three of us, amongst all the local Jersey people, would skate together and come into the city and commiserate and whatever. So
yeah. I don't know. Let's walk through.
Anyhow, so this leads to the first photograph, which interestingly, and I pointed this out to the gentleman that we were just talking to. That's you, right?
That is not me.
Oh, that's not you.
And I only know that because of the sneakers.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Damn, that looks a lot like you, which is interesting.
And then, yeah, because 95% of people think that's me.
All right, because you're wearing that Blue Jay shirt, and I just figured that it looks a lot like you, and I was like, almost like, wow, this is interesting, because here's Quim, right, in this photograph, who is supposed to play your part.
Yeah.
And the first thing I noticed as soon as I walked in, I was like, damn, he's got a Salman Agah shirt on. And I was like, it's crazy. And also in the background there, I don't know if that's Pat Duffy.
Yeah.
And no, that's not Harold, but there's a lot.
I want to say the red shirt is Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams. And this might be Andy Batista right here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot going on in all of these photographs. And so this is the first photograph when you walk into the gallery for the most part. There is this other side. But I was like, oh, this is great. There's the two Tullys,
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, but this is not you.
I want to say, because these look like 1 stars or something, these weird, like,
yeah.
I definitely had crazy, random Marshall sneakers and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's me.
Okay, so the other thing I got to point out is this little dude back here, which is incredible because it's like full, not necessarily goofy boy, but it's like, it's pretty fascinating stuff, the way kids dressed back then. And that dude's shirt is like it's like a dress on.
Yeah, and then you have this guy wearing like Timberlands and like a dress shirt.
Yeah, totally, totally.
And then this looks like just like a rollerblade.
Yeah, and I was just saying how I used to drive my car into the banks and park it there all day and go skate, and there's some cars parked there.
Yeah, and the
trunk open. Yeah, super fascinating. All right, so this leads to this. Now, that's not Tim Ashiel.
Yeah, it is.
It is Tim Ashiel. Yeah. Okay, that's who I thought it was. And here we go. There's the guy with the Timberlands, who I think that dude skated, if I'm not mistaken. But I can't remember his name. Anyhow, Tim Ashiel, earring, which is incredible. God, look at him, dude. That's crazy. And I would almost say that he probably dyed his hair. Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
His hair kind of having that color.
Yeah. Okay. These two guys. I mean, this is next level shit right here. This dude these are not skate shoes, which was definitely uncommon back then don't get me wrong, you would have Kyle James who would show up and skate in Tim's, but for the most part, like these are full on like basketball shoes, and he's definitely just gotten introduced into the culture or what have you, but the Bulls jersey as well. I don't want to say like Long Island guy, but you know, it's definitely interesting. Anybody that I don't recognize in here, I'm like, oh, that guy's from Long Island.
But so I'm curious if you recognize any of the graffiti.
Yeah. So this is Seno. This is Seno, and that's Seno, Jay.
Because this is everywhere.
That's everywhere. This is the same dude.
Okay.
These two things are the same dude, Seno.
And did you paint at all back then?
I did, but I was a skateboarder, and so my like dabbling in graffiti was essentially that. I was just dabbling in it.
Because do you remember, like, homeless dudes lived back here?
Yes, oh, for certain. This is the like, anchorage of the building.
They would like run power out of there somehow.
Well, they would run it out of the
electrical box,
the light post. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I just saw a picture of the banks and it's all bricked up, and I was like, oh yeah. I remember like homeless guys living there.
When I first started going to the banks, these were actual wood doors. Mm-hmm. And then at a certain point, they took the wood doors out and they cinder blocked it up.
Right.
And those wood doors, and I told this story maybe once or twice, but I peeked my head in there one time, and I was just like, I'm never going back in there, anything.
Yeah.
I think like a cigarette butt almost like hit me like square in between the eyeballs. All right, this photograph, this is insane. Here's the Brooklyn Bridge, gives you kind of a perspective, but this is Colin McKay and Danny Way, and Colin McKay is wearing a Judas Priest live shirt, which is pretty damn interesting. And these are dead end stickers. And this is that light post where they used to draw the power out of. I don't know who any of these guys are back here.
But you know, it's like interesting, what I always say is like, skateboarding is kind of one of the only sports where you can potentially like meet your heroes. Just like on a random
At this point, definitely, because
like Plan B was
the top of the shit
top of the
pile.
chain.
Yeah.
And so you have like two of the best guys just hanging out with a bunch of randoms.
Not only two of the best guys, but two of the most progressive, not only vert skateboarders, but at this point, street and vert, which is crazy because in many other sports, you don't have that kind of dichotomy. Maybe Bo Jackson, where he was a pro football player and a pro baseball player. Like, that's the only thing I could...
And then, you know, there's that famous footage that I want to say Dave Schubert shot of Danny Way no-sliding the handrail.
Next level.
Snapping the tail of the board off.
Not only that, but did you know that eventually, after he does that, he tries to switch nose-slide the handrail, which is crazy because just doing anything on that handrail at that time period the handrail was not little.
Yeah.
So for him to do it that regular, make it, snap his board, and then try it switch was like, you're talking complete insanity, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I would say complete insanity was just trying it regular.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Anything down that rail at that time
was
like legit.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, I want to move over to this wall really quickly. Okay, so now we get into some meat and potatoes, no pun intended. Who's this?
Andy Roy.
Andy Roy.
So this is probably, if not the day I was talking about, definitely that time period. And this was like a party trick Andy used to always do, where he'd just pull his balls out.
Sure.
Like, this probably went on for a good 20 minutes before anyone noticed.
Right.
You know, and then he's like, what, dude, put your balls away, whatever. So you can imagine like a 14-year-old me being around these guys and being like, what?
Yeah.
And like, you know, just feeling so intimidated.
Yeah. Also, I mean, obvious, if it's not obvious, he's drinking a Budweiser, which 14-year-old you probably never had drank. Maybe
pictures of me drinking.
Okay, there you go. So you know.
But I probably didn't drink with these guys.
Yeah.
I could drink. Yeah. You know, like socially, but this was probably way too intimidating for me to feel like part of their crew and have a beer with them. I probably got out of there as quick as possible.
And this is also like kind of
this is
prime,
Larry's house.
This is Larry's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
So basically, I should have given you this interview before we did this, because Larry talks about all this. So I want to say during this contest, Tobin, Mickey, Julian, Stranger, Cardiel, and probably
Arco?
Roy.
Was Arco there?
I don't know, but they were all staying at Larry's house.
Coco was around too, right?
Yeah, but I've never heard too much about Coco.
Okay, gotcha.
And maybe Coco, because of Jersey, wasn't like staying with these guys.
Gotcha, okay.
But, so they stayed with Larry for like a week, and it was like those 4 dudes all like sleeping in Larry's like kids' room, which isn't big. Yeah. And I think, they just like drank and partied.
You mean Larry's child's room?
Yeah.
He has an offspring and, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, like, you know, Larry has like this loft with a few bedrooms.
Yeah, gotcha.
But it was like 4 of these guys, they would just get drunk and passed out in like the kids' bedroom.
I will also point out Andy Roy and the crew of people you just mentioned, this is like prime hell ride crew kind of like scenario as well. So these guys are in full formation.
Yeah, it's like basically like the beginning of Anti-Hero.
Yeah, right.
Like right as that whole Anti-Hero thing started forming.
Right.
Because I want to say Anti-Hero maybe started probably 94.
94?
Yeah.
94, 95, right.
So it was like, you know, these guys probably had few $100 and they're like, let's go to New York.
Yeah.
And like, you know, see what happens.
We should also point out that the reason these pros are in town is because there's a big contests happening this whole weekend.
Yeah.
I believe it was the Banks, the Playground, and maybe Brick Township. Could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
Bricktown?
It is Brick, yeah.
Bricktown, yeah.
Because I went to Brick. I didn't go to Playground, but I remember going to Brick, and it was just like a demo. You know, you have like all these guys pulling out the moves, and for some weird reason, I remember like Mirko Magnum.
Yeah,
he was great back then.
Yeah,
and Caesar Singh was also really good back then.
Both dudes that were very similar in their kind of like style and whatever. Yeah, awesome dudes. Okay, so this leads to this. Now, this one's interesting because A, it's out of focus for one, but there's Mike Ternasky.
Yeah.
And this is someone, there's Danny Way.
It weirdly looks like Jeremy Ray, but it's
not Jeremy Ray. Somebody in the comments is going to point out who this is, and I can almost make out that board, but I can't really.
Is there maybe like an alternate angle? But I mean, also around this time, it wasn't uncommon for kids to take their graphics off.
Totally.
Using like nail polish remover or whatever.
Totally.
You know, like having a blank board was like a way to like trick people into thinking you were sponsored.
Yeah, totally.
Like, oh, I get blanks.
Totally.
You know.
Now this, I could be wrong because it's out of focus. Let me see. Let me put my glasses on here. This might be Jay Mullally, who is Seno. This is Vert, V-E-R-T, of the infamous IMLK crew. There's a Vert tag right there. I could be wrong about this, and he's going to kill me if I am wrong, but this might be Seno. But I can't really tell. It's kind of out of focus, but it looks a lot like Jay.
I mean, it's also weird because, like, I don't know where one would find this drawer shirt. Like, that wasn't like a common thing.
Right.
It was a company, but I don't feel like, like, you know, everybody was just trying to like piece together whatever they could find to look cool, but it wasn't like common. Like a Bob shirt was like coveted.
Right.
You know, like,
well, I'll also point this out. Look at how close all these 3 shirts are.
Yeah.
I mean, and you get into this. This, I believe, I could be wrong. Is that's Sammy? It looks very Hispanic there.
Sammy Glucksman?
Yeah.
No, that's not.
That's not Sammy. Okay. Again, this is a blurry photo, but it looks like kind of Hispanic Sammy.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we have Joey Alvarez. Jeff Simmons.
Yeah.
Don't know who this is. And I don't know anybody else in this photograph. But again, vert tags. I forget who this graffiti writer is.
Yeah.
But again, the dead end stickers. And I will also point out this ATM clickboard.
Yeah, which ATM had like just started.
Just popped off. Oh, the other thing is Jeff is wearing a Nimbus shirt, and I am wearing the same Nimbus shirt that day. But Jeff and I were both kind of like, Jeff definitely was in the crew, the Nimbus crew, definitely getting stuff. I don't know if he was ever like officially on Nimbus, because it was like, you know, all that stuff was kind of like, you know, kind of murky back then. But yeah, I don't really recognize any of the other guys. Okay, here's your Toronto Blue Jays shirt. Look at your wheels, dude.
Well, this is a Bill Weiss shirt.
Okay. There.
So I don't know what company Bill Weiss was riding for, or why I ended up with that shirt?
Okay, so I would say that that might be a new school skateboard shirt, or maybe Bill at that point, I can't remember. He's like kind of like a weird kind of outlier in that thing, because he ends up riding like years later for what, XYZ?
Yeah, like Platinum.
Platinum,
like,
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah, like why a skate shop in New Jersey, New York would even have a Bill Lee shirt, and how I ended up with it is confusing.
Yeah. Who's this guy? Do you remember him? I remember his face.
He was from Jersey.
Yeah, I remember his face. I feel like he might be part of the Quim Cardona.
No. He was from our area.
Oh,
he
all
was
right.
from like northern Jersey.
Okay.
I can't think of his name right now, but he was definitely part of like the Wayne kind of Parsippany scene.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember his name either.
But then also like, I don't know what the sticker is on my board. It's like maybe a New Deal sticker. But yeah, and everybody also mentions the wrench. They're like, you guys didn't have a skate key back then?
I mean, they made them, but
generally, somebody had to skate around with a wrench in their pocket all day.
But this was also probably to clonk somebody on the head. Look at his like weird little fish.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, you have to remember this is prime skater raver.
Yeah, totally.
Which is
That's another thing that we all.
Shirts,
yeah.
Baggy pants, and all that.
Yeah. And you pointed out earlier that Deee-Lite showed up, and I remember her being there, Lady Miss Kier, and I think Dimitri was there, DJ Dimitri.
I think all of them were there.
Oh, all three of them?
Yeah.
I definitely remember, and I was like, because like you're saying about the pro skateboarders, celebrity was different back then. Celebrity was way less, you couldn't, like celebrities were like unattainable, whereas now with like social media, you could be like talking to Scottie Pippen, you know,
that's
whatever.
why like having Danny Way show up,
exactly.
You're like, what the fuck?
Exactly. And on top of it, it was like so many other celebrity skateboarders as well. But Danny Way was definitely Danny Way because he had made his bones in public domain and then H Street. And
like
he was.
I would imagine like virtual reality had come out.
For certain. Yeah, for certain. If not, it was like just on the. Yeah, maybe virtual reality comes out in '92. So this is like. And you know, the other thing that I'll point out is these guys are not even skating.
Yeah.
They don't, I mean, Colin obviously doesn't have a skateboard with him.
Yeah.
And they're just like hanging out. Whereas my brain was like, I gotta skate, you know? Like these guys are hanging out. And then Danny Way, not skating, just goes and no slides the monster. You know, whatever, it's crazy shit. This one is this whole group of photographs is insanity because there's obviously a lot going on here. And this is, again, I'm gonna assume in Larry's house. No.
You're in this group.
What in the fucking hell?
You were there.
That is great. I have no recollection of this. Now, is this at what's-her-face's house on maybe like St. Mark's?
Yeah, that, I don't know.
Dude, that's
it's
crazy.
Not covered in tags, so it's probably not a young kid's house or room.
No, absolutely no recollection of that, and I didn't even notice that. But I will point this out. This is Curtis McCann.
Yeah.
Okay, of Underworld Element and London skateboarding scene in general. Ivan Hamilton. This looks like John Montesi. I was gonna say, what the fuck was John Montesi doing there?
What were you doing there? You should know the answer to this.
I don't know. I have no.
But this kid in the Fila shirt, I have no idea who that is.
It looks like NA, but it's not NA.
No, NA
it's definitely not
younger.
NA. Yeah, he was way younger.
Peter Hun,
Nuri, who wrote Prank, graffiti writer, skateboarder. Yeah, I have no idea who this is, and this dude looks familiar, but I can't.
His name is Eddie Peel.
And what was?
He was sort of like a Harmony, like a weird, like college-y, intellectual kid.
Okay.
I think he was probably best friends with Harmony, and they were just kind of like nerds.
Okay, all right.
But like nerds who skateboarded.
Yeah.
And Justin. So this is just like a smoke circle.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if I know I smoked weed at this point, but I don't know if I would smoke weed with this crew. Because
But weirdly, it almost looks staged, or like the scenario had been set up, because it's almost like too perfect. Like all these guys sitting around smoking weed, blowing weed into each other's mouths.
I mean, so I will admit, when I walked into the opening and I was like, oh shit. First thing I thought, I was Curtis McKay. And Curtis, when he came to the city, it was like a big deal because it was like a British guy.
Yeah.
And you were like, do people skate in England? You know, like that's stupid for me to say, but my brain back then was just like, oh yeah, like why would they ever come to New York, you know?
Yeah.
But this right here is where it gets a little, you're like, I was like, oh shit, they're shotgunning, but it looks like they're kissing.
But it's also, so I guess it's, Curtis McKay would ride for Underworld Element. Montesi would be on New Deal at this time. So there's probably like, they were doing some tour.
Sure.
Like some demos or something.
Curtis definitely stayed in the city for quite a bit of time.
But like the weird thing about this group of photos is like, you can feel Curtis's like charisma through the photo.
Sure.
You're like, damn, he was so cool looking.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, again, just being from England. Like, wow, he's so exotic.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing is that when you think of English people, you're thinking of like white people, and here's this kind of like, you know, very, like you said, a very exotic dude, and he was also incredible on a skateboard, and he rode for Underworld Element. So it was like, this is a wild scenario.
And you also, it was like, I mean, Sky Pager is like an incredible video, but I think we understood how hard it is to be seen as skateboarders just on the East Coast, let alone England. Like you have to be really fucking good.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like definitely a standout in that scene. And he also, I guess point this out, this is way before, in many respects, Tom Penny and even Jeff Rowley are kind of like on the scene. Now, obviously, England and, you know, the London scene has Bod Boyle, Steve Douglas, you know, a whole bunch of vert skateboarders. But for the most part, Curtis is like the first wave of like street people coming out of that scene.
And maybe you'd see some like sketchy footage in like a 411.
It'd
be like a small section. It'd be like postcards to 411.
Totally.
And there was always like the same five guys.
Yeah, totally.
With some like...
I guess I'll also point out that Peter Hun rode for, Peter Hun also rode for Nimbus, which is the shirt I was saying, Jeff. But Peter Hun then rides for Underworld Element after Nimbus. And Jeff Pang, so, you know.
And Harold.
And Harold, yeah, shit, totally, wild. Yeah, this is a crazy one. But a friend of mine actually asked me when I came to the opening, they were like, oh, is there any pictures of Ivan? And I didn't recognize that Ivan was in this, because it was very crowded in here, and I kind of went through. And I was like, oh, there's no pictures of Ivan, but sure enough, there's Ivan Perez.
And you know, like Ivan is such a unique character.
Totally.
I'm sure he was suspicious of the whole thing. Like, I could see him being like, nah, I'm not being a part of this.
Yeah. This is such a crazy mix of like different scenes, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said, Curtis, Nuri, you know, and Ivan coming out of Sunset Park.
I would imagine. It seemed at that point, Ivan was already this kind of like legend.
Totally.
That could, in our minds, skate for anybody.
Totally.
You know, but he was always so weird. Like, you know, there was never footage. There was like a couple of photos.
He was wild.
But you would hear these legends like, oh, he did this. Like he switch ollied this barrier.
Yeah, totally.
And, like,
totally.
So like, I mean, I think Ivan is probably one of the most like respected New York skateboarders.
Totally.
That people have never seen skate.
Totally. I mean, you could also throw Ducky in there. Mm-hmm. Ducky is legendary. Stephen Callis doesn't have that much footage. I think I heard a story about Mark having a Polaroid of Stephen Callis, and on the back he wrote something like, this is the most, or maybe Mark Gonzalez said something that Stephen Callis was the most naturally gifted skateboarder he had ever seen. Yeah. And now coming out of Mark's mouth, that's, you know.
No, there's a photo of Steven in the show where he's like a brand new ATM clickboard.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think, any kind of recognition from Mark Gonzalez, you're like, whoa, totally. This guy rides for Mark Gonzalez.
Totally.
But, it's like he has the ATM clickboard, the like extra large hat. And it's interesting that Steven would kind of go on to, I would think, influence the creation of Menace.
For certain.
Like,
for certain.
Like, you know, basically just bringing that fashion sense into skating.
Also, Steven's lingo at the time, between him and Mike Hernandez, it was like they created the like modern lexicon of like, you know, whatever. And Rodney at Shut, at Zoo York and Shut. All right, next photo. Incredible batch of photos. I'd never seen these before. Again, here we have this. I mean, this is a heavy one. Colin, Pat Duffy, Rick Howard, Mike Ternasky. Somebody pointed out who this dude was.
Well, that's also Danny Way. And
Matt Dove.
Matt Dove.
I didn't, you know, and I asked you, I think, on Instagram, if did anybody confirm that was Matt Dove? Because I remember Matt Dove looking a little bit slightly different, but I also only met Matt Dove a couple times. But and then somebody also pointed out that this might have been somebody, but that also looks like Serge Trinowski back there.
No,
but it's not. Yeah.
I don't know why I think this, but I feel like that might be like Matt Schnurr or somebody. Because these guys always, like, there was always the guy who, like, hung out with the Plan B guys, but rode for, like, Planet Earth.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Like, oh, he might just be a cool guy.
Yeah. Let me just point this out. And this is my thinking. Matt Schnurr would never have his hands in his pockets. And he would never have a magazine. Matt Schnurr, to me, would be, like, up in the mix. You know, because Schnurr was like, he was incredible skateboarder, and he was like, I thought Matt Schnurr could have been on Girl early on, but he was on Planet Earth, and he was definitely a progressive skateboarder. I don't know if you remember, he did switch big spins, and he did them incredibly. And I always thought, if there was two guys that could have been in that Girl camp, it was Matt Schnurr, could have been on Girl, and Danny, oh God, spacing on his name. Who's the dude that wrote for Audio and Rhythm?
Danny Montoya?
Danny Montoya should have been on Chocolate, in my opinion.
All right.
But anyhow,
yeah.
Controversial take. Next photo, Ben Liversedge.
Yeah.
Frank Nattiello. This almost looks like Barker.
This is Ryan Trimmer from Clifton.
What the heck? Oh my God. That is crazy. I haven't seen Ryan's photo in so many years, but infamous story about Ryan Trimmer, and I think I probably told you about this, but the Gons demo at Westwood, or at one of the Gons demos, Ron Chapman, Dune, and Gons.
Yeah.
Ryan, we were all supposed to go, and Ryan is coming to pick me up from Nutley.
Yeah.
And my mom is sitting at the kitchen table, and she's like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "What?" And I'm waiting for this dude to come and pick me up, and he's got like Ben Ruttkowski in the car, and we're all about to go to this demo. And I'm like, I'm gonna go see a Gons demo. My mom's like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Sounded like a car crash." Next thing I know, I see Ryan Trimmer skating up my block, and I'm like, I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, "I crashed my car around the corner." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "So we can't go to the demo?" We didn't go to the demo. I missed the damn demo. But man, what a character. And there's Jeff. Yeah, crazy. Frank Nattiello. Dude, I saw Frank years later, and he was like a mobster. Right. He was like Big Diesel, and I didn't recognize him. I almost didn't recognize him. Okay, next photo.
This is basically what we were talking about, like the beginning of Menace.
For certain.
Right, because like, so here you have Billy Valdez, Fabian Alomar. I want to say that's probably Kareem.
Yeah.
This is Slick Rick.
Yep.
Javier Nunes.
Gangster Rick, as I knew him.
Yeah.
Slick Rick, but yeah, for certain. He actually used to say at a certain point, speaking of lingo, he would call himself Gangster Riok. And we were just like, how do you're adding like vowels into your name now?
But also,
dude, Javier's
this
so
is
young.
In front of Supreme.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
Lafayette.
Yeah, for certain. Which looks so different now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is got,
I mean, Supreme probably
94?
Just opened.
Yeah, 94, 95. Crazy. Billy Valdez. In fact, later on, you could almost make the case that this was Billy Valdez. But Gangster Rick, man, what a character.
And Billy was so good at skating, but you never really saw much footage.
Again, going back to the Ivan, he's probably like, You know, and I will also say that Gabriel Rodriguez, in many respects, has his peak in the Powell days in terms of like how good he was.
Yeah.
He was way ahead of a lot of the guys back then on street. And by the time like Chocolate happens, you know, I don't want to say he's like going, you know, because he was still incredibly good.
Yeah.
But when he was on in that Powell, you know, LA Boys, if you ever watch any of the footage of Gabriel, he was like so incredibly good.
Yeah,
you know?
but I mean, I feel like in those Chocolate videos, because everything is kind of mind blowing, you forget like what Gabriel did at the Santa Monica courthouse on that stage.
Yeah.
Like he's just doing everything fake.
Yeah.
Switch
so good.
And like,
yeah.
you could tell he's sort of like blasé about it.
Yeah, totally.
But like,
totally.
I mean, he's just like super gifted, and you could tell Guy and everybody kind of looked up to him.
Totally. He was the leader of that four-man crew for certain.
Yeah.
For certain. Okay, here we go. This is again the corner of Spring and Lafayette.
No, Prince Lafayette.
Prince and Lafayette. Crazy.
Which, do you remember this was like a diner at some point?
Yes. So crazy. And then Extra Large was right here, right?
Liquid Sky was right there.
Liquid Sky, Jesus. The firehouse. And then David Bowie like lived right across the street, right?
Oh yeah, I remember hearing that.
But look at Javier, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, like the other day somebody was saying how they never thought airwalks were cool. And I was like, they had a moment.
Dude, they had a long moment, because you remember, I don't know how far you go back, but Billy Ruff rode for Airwalk, and when that weird chicken skull thing was on them. And when they came out, it was like the first like skateboard shoe for skateboarders, you know?
No, but I mean this kind of one era.
Oh
like
yeah, for certain. The gym shoe. Harold ran the gym shoe. Koston ran it.
You would see like a Jason Lee running them. And
I remember when the gym shoe came out, I remember seeing Harold in them and Koston, and I was like, I need to have that shoe.
Yeah.
But there was just nowhere to buy them. Nowhere to buy them. I think maybe you could get them at Bleecker Street. What was that shoe spot on Bleecker Street?
The one on 8th Street where they sold random
And you went down into the basement.
You could get Wallabies there.
Yeah.
Or like knockoff Wallabies.
Yeah.
I don't even know, half of it was knockoffs.
I feel like you could get them there, but they were also like sold out pretty quickly. This one's crazy. Andy Batista wearing a fun Huff shirt.
Which that would be like in a museum now.
For certain.
Like there's collectors out there I think would really want to have that.
Okay, he's riding a Renee Matheson New Deal board.
Yeah.
Justin riding the ATM. I didn't even realize that Justin was riding that board that day. But yeah, again, another museum piece in terms of that board. Yeah, Justin, crazy. He also rode for Nimbus as well. And this, I guess, would be kind of like, even though I'm wearing a Nimbus shirt, I don't know why Justin would have. But these guys, I will admit, everyone in the city was way ahead of what we were getting in Jersey. You know, we were almost like, the city guys were on the cusp of like everything, fashion, you know, whatever, because they just had a pipeline into like, who the hell knows what.
But I mean, what did Naraka just put out this hat that said the best New York skaters?
Yeah, which I was just like, when he sent it to me, I was like, whoa, that's pretty bold.
But, you know, I think there was always that kind of like, competitiveness because we were always going to be the underdogs just because we were from Jersey. So it didn't matter how good you were.
Yeah.
And I think the only people that ever really like broke through, and I don't know if you felt it, I felt like you got respect and Kim got respect.
Brian Blake.
But even like guys like Tim O'Connor and Poncho, they were still like just from Jersey.
Yeah, but those guys, I feel like Tim, this might not necessarily be true, but I feel like Kim and I definitely were in the city way more than Tim was. Tim was in the city a lot, but he was operating on a different schedule where I was rolling with these guys. I was like in the sort of like, because of Charlie and Nimbus, I was kind of like in these guys like crew.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And Quim was definitely like just omnipresent.
And just style-wise.
And just you could not help but look at this like little miniature human being doing all the craziest shit.
And I still think Kim's nollie varial kickflip over the wall is the best trick that's ever been done over the wall.
I mean, you know, the switch 3 flip, Rob Welsh, that's next level shit. Obviously, Mike V. Olling, the gate is insane. But that one is, you're just like, what? How did he do that?
It just looks
It's
so
insane. I will also say Javier's switch flip is insane because when he did that, it was like, no one, he did it so good. And Javier was like, he was a good skateboarder, but he was not, he was all over the place. But he dialed that in perfectly.
Yeah.
Perfectly. I mean, other people have done other crazier shit. I will say Maurice Key did some crazy shit over the wall. Ryan Hickey's frontside flip is insane.
Yeah.
There's a whole laundry list of things. Ivan, first person I ever saw nollie it.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, going back to Narako's hat, if Narako ever watched Ducky, Steven, or even Mike Hernandez or Huff, Keenan, you would not make that hat.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I enjoy the poking.
I do too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Powell Peralta shirt.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
But what is written on it?
It might be, that might be like almost.
Big O, Whittier.
Oh, it's a tour shirt.
Or is it all Parks?
Or something. Oh yeah, it might be Parks. Yeah.
Marina.
Yeah, it's Parks.
Skateboard City.
Yeah, all Parks. That's great. I've never even seen that shirt.
Yeah.
And I just noticed it now. That dude looks super familiar, but I can't remember. Okay, this one, girls. There's girls in there.
Super rare.
Yeah, super rare, for certain. Mel and Hollyann were always around, but super rare for girls. But also this is an event, so there's another vert tag. Oh, I'll point this out, SN. SN is one of the guys in the mighty FTR crew, Queens guy. And again, you know, this was like a melting pot of like different scenes. But SN, if you remember Huff's trick, 360 flip, I think, over the wall. Might have even been this day, might have been later, but SN has a fill-in on the wall right under Huff's sequence. Might be a Tobin Yelland photo, might not be. Who's this dude? I don't know who this guy is.
I'm not even sure what the hell is going on in this photo. It's obviously Washington Square Park.
Right.
You have the arch, and that's Fifth Avenue.
Yeah. Drake?
What Drake Jones and this guy, I want to say this was maybe like a setup for the film.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know what this guy's doing back here.
Well, he either looks like he's DJing or selling hot dogs.
I want to say, but he has like a
definitely. There's definitely a DJ booth or what looks like, or maybe.
No, he's not DJ. I think he has a walkie because he's working on the movie.
There you go. Okay.
So this could have been like something
Okay, there you
shot
go.
for the movie. Because even this weird like teabags sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Nobody really wore teabag. You couldn't even find that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then there's the only other photo of Drake, I want to say, is like in a van, which could be like a production vehicle.
Okay.
Like, so maybe he was supposed to be in the film.
Now here's another one. I don't ever remember Drake in the city, because he was from upstate somewhere.
Oh.
Drake has some kind of weird connection to upstate New York, and I've spent a lot of time with Drake, but I never really got his like whole story in terms of like moving around. But he was definitely like an upstate guy, and definitely maybe not Newburgh, but maybe like somewhere around that zone. But I don't ever remember skating with Drake in the city. I only remember Drake coming into like the sort of like whatever, the scene or whatever through SF.
Yeah, I never saw Drake Jones.
Yeah.
I don't think, because again, he just like looks so cool. You would know if he walked in the room.
Totally.
You'd be like, holy shit.
For certain. All right, these guys, Long Island guys, my friend Mike pointed them out to me. Oh, speaking of airwalks.
Yeah.
There we go. And this, I mean, another museum piece, this
Jason Lee,
Jason, yeah. And a number 9 shirt, which is, if I'm not mistaken, a Long Island brand. Here we have Vert fill-in and a Gaze IMOC tag, I am okay, and a Cycle tag.
Yeah.
Cycle's at the contest this day.
And I feel like, again, I'm not a graffiti person, but I feel like Cycle was really up at the banks.
Well, I think he knew the contest was coming, and you remember the famous Jamal photo from that day with the cycle fill-in on the wall, and Jamal's riding the Gons, ATM click, upside down, faces graphic. All right, so there you go. Toronto Blue Jays. For some reason, I just thought you were rocking a Toronto Blue Jays shirt, but it is a Bill Weiss shirt. And man, I know Bill rode for New School. He never rode for Workshop. And if anything, in terms of Toronto, Workshop was, what's his face? The other vert guy out of Toronto. Oh God, I'm spacing on his name.
I don't know too many vert guys for Workshop.
I'll come back to it.
Not like Justin Boakma.
No, Justin Boakma was a Toronto guy though too.
Yeah.
But Morgan, Thomas Morgan.
Thomas Morgan
Is out of Toronto, vert guy, rides for the Workshop. But Bill Weiss didn't ride for the Workshop.
No, I feel like he was always on this like outlier.
Yeah, for certain.
Wannabe kind of World Industries company.
For certain.
He would have like terrible ads in Big Brother.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
He would probably get canceled if he.
For certain.
Like, because he was always doing like naked McTwists at like a contest full of little kids. You're like, oh, that is not.
Yeah.
So it's incredible, like.
And just to point this out, the other guy that would skate naked at the contest was Steve Schneer. Do you remember this? You might not. It might be before your time.
That's a little before my
But he would put the sock on his, And then I got to point this out. Remember Huff's, Ron Allen, Huff, and maybe even Keenan with the socks?
Right. That was like a fun ad?
Yeah.
And they were just riffing off Red Hot Chili
Peppers, yeah.
But
that's a weird one. Yeah.
Yeah, like who talked?
And speaking of Harmony, that story Benny told me, he said Harmony came down his block in Flushing with a sock on his joint, and Benny was skating with his buddies, and they were like, what the hell is up with this guy? And they quickly pulled him in, and they were like, don't do this. You're gonna get killed.
That story sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah, but I think Benny then said that Benny became really good friends with Harmony, and then I think one of the characters in Kids is named Benny, and Benny was supposed to even be Justin's character, or something like this. He tells this story. It's a great story, but you'd have to have Benny tell it.
Yeah.
Okay, again, this dude, you remember him?
I do. I can't recall his
Bizarre
name.
guy.
But I feel like Twilliger was really close.
Yes. Again, getting into that rave scene.
Yeah.
And dreads, and it's a great shirt. But look at this dude's hair.
And the Postal Service patch.
Super sick. And that looks like a girl.
So this would be Washington Square Park.
Washington Square Park.
And you could even see the garbage cans set up.
For the jumper.
For some reason, we thought this was a bank you could do tricks out of, but it was barely a bank.
Barely a bank.
And then sometimes people would try to skate the ledge to the side of it.
Totally. I mean, Harold had tricks on that. I was obsessed with that for a little while, trying to do whatever off of it.
But it was so chunky that wasn't like a real thing. And much like the bank wasn't a real bank.
Right, totally. So do you remember Harold in, I think, the Underworld Element video, does nollie late front foot flip off of the ledge, possibly even into that little crusty embankment. But they also, unfortunately, kind of redid this whole plaza at a certain point.
But kids still skate there.
Oh yeah, I mean the ledges there are kind of legit. I think one kid kick flipped over the fountain wall into the fountain, which is crazy.
I think maybe that was the first kind of rumor I heard about Ivan. Was
that he ollied the fountain.
Into the fountain.
Yeah.
Which seemed unfathomable.
Unfathomable.
It was so big.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And far.
Yeah.
And dangerous.
It's just insane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now when you're Tyshawn and guys treat it just like an everyday obstacle.
It's crazy.
Back then.
I actually walked through it the other night, and I kind of was with my girlfriend, and I was kind of looking at it how, because I remember this to be super crazy. I tried it. I tried to ollie it just because I was fuck it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. But yeah, it's always, anytime I walk through that park, that's the first thing I look at. Could I do this now? How crazy is it? Okay, Matt O'Brien and Living Room.
Yeah.
Jamal Simmons.
Yeah.
Living Room Johnson.
Yeah.
These two chicks, I remember them being around, and they were kind of I don't want to say Hollyan's crew, but Matt O'Brien from Connecticut also rode for Nimbus. This dude is obviously a Boston dude because you're not wearing a Boston hat in New York at that time.
And I also don't, I remember these like horror stickers, but maybe it was just like a dead end kind of giveaway sticker.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, it wasn't uncommon to just put a sticker on your clothing back then.
Yeah. He looks like a Boston guy.
Now, I don't know who would put a horror sticker on their shirt, but back then.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
Kids were trying to be weird.
Yeah. Great jacket, great hat, great earrings. The earrings are great. Sunglasses. This Toyota van wagon, incredible. I would kill for that thing right now. Yeah, insane. Dude, look at Hamilton. Oh, there's Hollyann right there.
Yeah.
And Jim Gagnon.
Jim Gagnon.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I want to say that's Tobin.
Yeah, I was gonna say it almost looks like a more conservative Julian.
Yeah,
flat brim hat, that button-up shirt. But yeah, you know what else is crazy? Look at that BMX bike back there. Wild. Yeah.
But like, have you ever talked about the like BMX versus skater rivalry?
Of course.
That would happen at the banks?
I mean, it was almost like, and I guess guys like Eli and some of the older cats could probably, because when we started going there, it was more the rollerbladers.
Right.
The rollerbladers were like this, it was like a pestilence, like just, they were all over the place.
What was it? Was it the company called like FR or something? And Harold's brother was a rollerblader.
Yeah.
And
Ron.
There was like there was just as many like pro rollerbladers in New York, and that had like that whole like hip hop. It was like kind of that ski crew. Scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. But I remember getting into fights at the banks with BMX'ers.
BMX'ers, yeah, because it was like the BMX'ers. They were like, they had much more. They took up way more space.
Yeah.
And the banks is not that. It's not that like friendly of a space where you got. I'm gonna go skate this part of the banks over here. It was just like across the banks, And if you got hit with a bike, forget it.
Yeah, I remember these bikers. I think it was like, I know it was me and Hassan Woods, and maybe somebody else. And these bikers rolled up, and they kind of like jumped us or something. I don't know, but I remember I tried to jump over the wall, and somebody like had me in a chokehold against the other side of the wall, where like traffic is.
You jumped over the wall. You mean like physically without your skateboard, not trying to ollie the wall?
No,
you were trying to get away from the dude.
I was trying to get away, and like just kind of dip over the wall, and somebody grabbed me by the neck. And for some reason, they wouldn't touch Hassan. And Hassan's like, yo, that's fucked up. And I'm like, why are you beating this dude up? But I think it's because I was white.
Yeah.
But
fascinating.
And I remember it just being like typical day at the banks.
Yeah, typical day.
All right,
yeah.
We gotta go fight with some bikers, or it's like I always tell this story. We were skating at PSE&G in Newark, and these kids rolled up on us to rob us. But we were probably 16 and they were like 10. Mm-hmm. We're like, get out of here, whatever. And they came back with their uncles.
Yeah,
uncles
sure.
are like, why didn't you let our nephews rob you? Now we have to do it.
Yeah.
And it was just like
take your clothes off.
Totally normal shit.
Yeah. All right, here you go.
And like, I think also back then, nobody really had video cameras because A, no one could afford them, but you also didn't want to risk getting like that shit stolen.
Totally.
Like people would just steal your backpack and you'd be like, I just have like school books in here. Yeah. And they'd be like, so?
Yeah,
like,
so.
Give me that shit.
Yeah. Totally. God damn. That's crazy. All right, this one's weird because this is parkland.
Yeah, I have no idea where this is shot other than that dune photo.
Oh, this might be Central Park.
Yeah, because I'm not really sure what's going on this day where it's Dune and this little kid.
Yeah.
And Kim. That's Kim.
That might be Central. That's Kim.
Yeah.
Oh, no shit. And here's Kim too.
Yeah. So you can kind of tell it's Kim.
I couldn't tell. I mean, maybe, now that you pointed out.
There's a third photo.
Yeah. Oh, this is crazy. I think this was Kim's friend.
Yeah.
Forget his name. But here's Kim. So he's got like some early, Kim and Mike both wrote graffiti. I forget what Kim wrote. But I know Mike wrote Sons, and this is at Astor.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's real like.
Oh, is this what's his face? Who then? What was their buddy, Blue? I forget what his name was. oh, he's gonna kill me too. It might not be him, but I think this was their buddy from like his zone.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That also then became like a really talented graffiti writer, and was also a talented skateboarder. I'm spacing on his name too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what everyone has to remember is that this is all 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And like, it's kind of amazing the information we've retained.
Yeah.
So like, we forget a few things.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Forgive us.
Yeah.
But the other thing in like typical Quim fashion.
Oh, for certain.
Is he has like this weird like Tibetan shirt under
a drug rug or something. Yeah, for certain. It's like you're wearing, like that should be over the Spitfire
and I
shirt.
feel like.
And the hat?
This hat. I don't think I ended up with this hat, but this was like a very like particular look.
Yeah, for certain.
Quim could pull off, but
not too many other people could pull off. Maybe Matt Field was also, but the button, that cap buttoned into that, it's almost like a Kangol type.
Yeah, it's like an Irish
kind
of...
Yeah, for certain. I mean, Quim was way ahead of the, you know, I shouldn't say way, he was just like operating on his own kind of like, you know, wavelength or whatever. Yeah, very interesting. Harold, this is in front of Supreme.
Yeah.
Again, Prince Street back here, Lafayette. Polo shirt, that belt. I wonder who...
I don't know who that is. I think I've seen an alternate angle and I still don't know who that is.
It's not really Dimitri, not Ryan Hickey.
No.
Justin's hair, man, what a... Yeah, it's crazy. This dude, look at the Filas with the logo in the front. Pizza Hut box. Bitches?
It says bitches ain't shit. And then maybe on the back, like bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks.
Yeah.
Or something.
Right.
Like very like Snoop Dre.
Yeah. $1 bill. He's like, there's only $1 here? Yeah.
But you can tell this is very much, how are we gonna shoot this film? What's it gonna look like?
Yeah.
You know, because this is obviously the beginning of the fight scene. Everybody's hanging out on the fountain, you know, just talking shit.
Yeah.
But in the movie, they just like heightened it as much as possible, and there happens to be 20 guys, not 2 guys.
I remember watching, I think even you were there. I was sitting on St. Mark's one day, and I remember watching you guys kind of like prepare for this scene. And I remember myself sitting there being like, when the fuck are we gonna go skate kind of thing? And you guys were like, we gotta do this movie thing.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, dude, this movie looks crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you wasting your time with this? And you know, it's funny like what it became. Yeah. I remember like writing it off in my brain as like, this is like some school project bullshit. Like, don't waste your time.
One of my favorite sort of comments about the film, there was one night where like me and Ryan Hickey were like drinking at the same bar, but like me and Ryan weren't never friends or nothing, you know? And for some reason we're talking, he goes, you know why I wasn't in that movie, Kids?
This is years later?
Yeah, or maybe a few years later.
Yeah.
He goes, you know why I wasn't in that movie, Kids? Because I ain't no kid. And I was like, fair enough. Dude.
Yeah, which is true. He was like a fucking...
But you know, and there's still like a lot of like pushback from a lot of people.
For certain.
About
For
that
certain.
film.
Yeah.
And,
it defined a super important like time period, kind of, and also Supreme too. Was like a heavy, like, you know, kind of like, it definitely set, you know, groups of people apart, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and it was also like, for me, it was like, it was crazy. Nobody told us what to do after the film comes out. You know? So we just go back to living our normal lives. And like, I'm still kind of like floating around New Jersey, like my mom's house and stuff. But you know, now I'm like recognizable in the city for being a bad guy.
Yeah.
And so I get that from the general public.
Yeah.
But then from this scene, it's like, who the fuck are you to represent New York? You're not from here.
Dude, I had the same shit too, you know, with the whole Jersey, you know, kind of like whatever, like, yeah, for certain.
So it's like crazy to be in this movie that's all about New York, but you're like just a Jersey guy to New York.
Yeah, for certain. For certain.
Which to this day, if people ever like assume I'm from New York, I correct it.
Yeah, same.
I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm from Jersey.
Yeah.
Like, I like being
Yeah, yeah. All right, here we go. Stephen Callis. Man, look how young he is. This is crazy. What the fuck is going on with Harold's board?
It's like he stirred some paint with it. But yeah, Stephen, Harold, Joey, Jamie Story, Robbie Gangemi,
Dan Zimmer.
Ah.
I don't know who this is. I remember him, but I don't know. This is the girl from the Sonic Youth cover. Just kidding.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, and you know that was the day Harold did the backside heel flip over the wall.
Yeah. And speaking of Jersey, in a New Jersey Devils.
Which, like, this is, nobody's wearing hockey jerseys back then. But
and
Harold,
nobody is wearing hockey jerseys now either.
But Harold can somehow like
pull it off, yeah, for certain. And
like a Cincinnati Reds hat, like it doesn't even like, match up.
Yeah.
Like,
here's a Sev tag back here, if I'm not mistaken. Sev is a long-standing Brooklyn Banks, grew up in Smith houses right behind the Banks. This dude is, and I always compare this to Steve Caballero. He is he's a Steve Caballero of graffiti for the longevity of his like career. Mm-hmm. And if you watch Future Primitive, there's Sev tags, Sev fill-ins and pieces at the Banks whilst Cab is skating the Banks.
So like that was like his playground.
His playground.
Practicing.
There was a few guys, Vifer, Sev. I mean, at a certain point, you know, Cycle actually, like I said, Cycle knew that the magazines were going to be there.
Yeah. And
Cycle did his shit. So when the photographers were in there, click, his photo's now in the magazine.
But Cycle skated.
Cycle also skated.
Yeah.
These guys, don't know who these guys are. A pimp hat.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
But that's a Supreme tee.
That's Peter. That's Peter Bisi.
I don't. Maybe it's. Peter.
It's either Peter or Jones.
Jones.
Yeah. And SB. There's an SB tag back there. SB was a Jersey guy, Hoboken, Jersey City, and he's an early 907 crew, which Nimbus Skateboards was one half Charlie Butterly and the other half was Ian McCarthy. And Ian, when he was a kid, lived in Alaska, and his area code in Alaska was 907, and that's where that whole 907 crew gets their graffiti moniker, or their crew.
The other thing is, you can tell by these photos that this photo and like those three photos, it's clearly not the day of the
Not the day of the contest, right, yeah.
So there were like these times where
Sure.
I'm not sure why Larry would go and photograph it.
Right.
So yeah, like the sequence of some of these are off.
Yeah.
Because like contest, not contest.
Oh, here you go. Okay, so Peter, not contest. Here's Peter at the contest wearing a Freeze shirt.
Was that like a ski brand or something?
It almost looked like that's a Venture sticker. Yeah, I don't know what Freeze is, but that's a Venture sticker. Peter at this point probably rode for, Nimbus was starting to kind of like basically, finish up because Charlie was going to school in Kansas City. Peter rides for Think after Nimbus.
Right.
And then quickly Zoo York starts and then Peter jumps ship onto Zoo. Here's Huff.
Which he ran that hairstyle for a long time. Which was a bold move, that hairstyle.
Yeah, well, Keith also he always talked about this, but he also used to dye his hair all the time.
Yeah.
Ben Liversedge.
Ryan Tremor again.
Is that Ryan Tremor again? Yeah, wild. Damn.
And then with that, Cycle had that look.
That's Cycle.
Yeah,
that's Cycle right there. Yeah, for certain. Yeah. Yep, for certain. And this is either a Day One shirt, Tim Gavin shirt.
Yeah.
That's a Tim Gavin shirt. This is probably a Thunder.
Yeah, definitely a Thunder shirt. Like the other thing with these like Bob shirts is like, look at the fucking neck on that thing.
Totally.
Like they were the worst fitting
You got to wear another shirt underneath. Yeah, Peter Bisi. I want to say for certain that's Peter Bisi.
I don't know, he looks kind of buff, which makes me want to think it's like Jones.
It might be Jones, yeah. All right, these guys, I don't know who these guys are, but pretty wild little crew.
Yeah, I think just like typical, just kind of like probably some Long Island kids or something.
And these you think are Airwalks?
Yeah, those are definitely Airwalks. The purple, gray.
Okay, what's going on here?
All right, so I would say about a month before we shot the film, I was like a very last minute casting decision. Like they wanted me to take voice lessons. They like said like, we can't understand him. He's not good looking.
Who's they?
Like Miramax, the producers.
Oh,
they're
wow.
like, this guy is not the star of our movie.
Okay.
And Larry like fought for me, and he's like, he's genuine. This is what kids are like.
Movie's already in the can?
No. We haven't even started shooting.
Okay, gotcha.
So Justin was always going to be Casper. That part was like basically written for Justin. And then you have the Quim Cardona thing. There's another kid that's not in this. There was another kid that was supposed to be Telly. But basically, the first kid aged out. He like hit puberty or something and looked different. So he didn't work. Then Kim, and then me. But like nobody wanted me in the movie. Because like my voice, and I just wasn't like... Basically, they would say, oh, you know, he's ugly or something. And Larry would say, well, if he's good looking, he wouldn't have to chase pussy. You know, like... Yeah. So Larry would like justify why I should be this character.
Yeah.
Chloe's part, they were never able to find the actress to do Chloe's part. This is an actress from California they flew in. Her name's Mia Kirshner. And so she tried to like go in character and like drink 40s and hang out with like all those girls back then. Those girls were like super intimidating, just as much as the guys. Yeah. And I think she got like kind of pushed out under a week.
Fascinating.
And then this is like literally 2 weeks before the film's supposed to be shot. And they're like, maybe let's just use Chloe. Chloe was already gonna have a small part in the film. She was maybe dating Harmony, but she wasn't supposed to be the star.
Yeah.
But Chloe just had that like it factor.
Sure.
You know, she like kind of was working at Liquid Sky and just kind of looked cool.
Yeah.
But this was the girl. So like, you know, it's weird because I was like in it, but that film like up until like a few weeks before was pretty chaotic. Like, how are we gonna do this thing? You know?
Did Larry have any ties to Hollywood prior to this?
Well, I know his books like influenced like Gus Van Sant.
Sure.
So like Drugstore Cowboy is kind of like based on some of Larry's photographs and stuff. So Gus Van Sant is a producer. And he would come to set.
So he's like the liaison between the Hollywood.
Basically, Miramax put out the film. Miramax paid for the film.
Yeah.
Harvey Weinstein, his brother. And but Miramax was owned by Disney.
Okay.
So the
Problems
film
or?
is like maybe NC-17 or unrated.
Yeah.
And so Miramax had to basically develop this shell company called Shining Excalibur, which only made one movie ever, and that's Kids.
Wow.
And I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure that's why it never really came out on DVD or VHS or anything. It's like, it's pretty hard to find.
It's out though now, isn't it on? No? Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the CD, the soundtrack.
The soundtrack, yeah. But the film itself is like really hard to find.
Fascinating. But there are copies on VHS and DVD? Who knows? Yeah. All you VHS collectors out there.
Yeah, I'm sure people have copies. You know, at that time I wasn't thinking of like saving anything or anything.
Do you have anything that you saved from that time period?
No.
What about that Quim hat? You said you might have...
Yeah, I want to say I ended up with that hat at some point.
Weird.
And then...
How? Do you remember how?
No.
You just grabbed it off
just
his head?
trade.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I like that hat. I like
Crazy.
that hat. Like, you know, I think basically you would run a style for like 2 years. You had like your one World Industry shirt or whatever. Yeah. And then you kind of grow tired of it. There'd always be somebody willing to trade something. Yeah. And then you're like, all right, this is my new identity.
Yeah. Gotcha. I don't think I ever traded a damn thing in my entire life. Anyhow. These guys, who knows? This guy looks kind of familiar, but I can't really place who that would be. Again, we have some like kind of civilians kind of looking, and cars. There's I remember the deluxe guys. Yeah. Or this is deluxe, but yeah, I remember them rolling up. That hat is pretty sick.
Plain Sane. Again, looks like maybe like a ski brand or something.
All right, this guy.
I don't have any information about this photo. It's a complete like outlier.
Yeah, he looks familiar.
Anything about it.
Yeah, fascinating. That also looks like who knows where that is.
Yeah, that could be like Tulsa or something.
A fence. We don't have fences.
Yeah.
Jay Maldonado.
Yeah.
Super fascinating.
Which, Jay looks pretty cool in that photo.
Look at that chain, dude. Yeah. Definitely. He's sitting on the Banks wall. This is the wall that people would do tricks over, and you'd land into basically the off-ramp of the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah.
That led into Park Row. That would take you like kind of into Chinatown.
Which, when they discuss bringing back the Banks, is that like completely off limits?
Who the hell knows?
Because I don't know what the point of bringing back the Banks is
if you don't,
can't go over the wall.
Yeah, for certain. Again, I don't know.
So this is another outlier.
Yeah, for certain.
Because this is on the set of Kids.
Yeah, for certain.
Right? So this is probably one of the few photos that's actually 95. Because this is the fountain.
Yep.
Washington Square Park. This is like a bounce card for lighting.
Yeah. Javier, Joey, Nick Lockman. Now he's an SF guy.
Yeah.
And he's a young kid as well.
Dude, they're fucking like 12 years old. So basically, it was him and this dude, Little Gary.
Yeah.
And LeVar McBride.
Geese, we used to call Little Gary.
And basically...
And LeVar, wow.
And so in the film, there's a scene with Javier and those three smoking weed.
Yeah, they got their shirts off.
Yeah.
I've seen the like...
And so basically, I remember at the end of filming, like nobody knows how they got to New York.
Yeah.
But at the end of filming, Larry or somebody from the production company calls Gary's grandmother in San Francisco. And was like, hey, we're gonna like buy him a ticket to fly home. And she's like, where is he? And they've been in New York for like a fucking month.
Dude, that's crazy.
And I don't know where they stayed or anything, but
crazy.
Again, like, the summer that film shot was like so specific, and the people that were around. Yeah. Like, I don't think you could have done it a year before or a year after.
Now wait, hold on. Is this the summer of 93? 93? Is this is obviously after the Banks, because the Banks contest is April of 93. Is it go that summer or the next summer, 94? Do you know?
I want to say 94.
Okay. And then it comes out towards the end of 94?
95.
95,
Something
okay,
like
got you.
But, yeah, so it's like, it just felt like the energy in the city at that time, again, like, nobody was really paying attention to us making a movie, because they probably thought like you, like, what is this, like a student film?
Yeah.
And then the other thing in this thing, with the fountain, so this is the kind of scene leading up to the big fight scene, right? Which is based on the Brooklyn Banks thing. And this guy gets a lot of love in the fight scene, because he just looks angry.
Who is that guy?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I thought it might have been Ronald, like Harold's brother, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
But so for the fight scene, two things happened. So basically, the cameraman is just under some blankets. Like that's how they're protecting him, because the kids are like beating up the cameraman, in theory. Mm-hmm. But some of these kids couldn't control their shit, and they're like actually
fighting,
beating up the camera guy to where he has to stop.
Yeah.
And he's like, yo, you gotta chill. And then Justin, there was like a stunt man, I think Justin like kicked somebody in the face or something. And like they practice it over and over. But like some things you can't plan. And Justin actually kicked the guy in the head, and they used that take and stuff. But like when we were shooting this scene, people would like run onto the set and try to break up the fight.
Amazing.
Because it looked so real.
Yeah.
And it was like not that unheard of to see something like that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Who was the camera guy? Was it like some Hollywood camera guy that Miramax flies in, or is it just some rando?
I think it was, if I'm not wrong, it was this guy Ed Lockman who shot like My Private Idaho.
Gotcha.
And stuff. He's like a real legend.
Yeah.
Legendary DP.
Yeah. Fascinating. All right, we're back to the Banks.
Yeah.
Peter Bisi, Ben Liversedge, and Justin. Looks like Hollyann back there. There's another Sev fill-in back there. I mean, this guy, Sev, his graffiti career is like, to this day, you can go down to the Banks and see fucking marker tags or paint tags. I mean, he is a legendary New York City graffiti.
If you had to put an age on him, what do you think?
Probably pushing, I would say probably 55, 56.
Right.
Yeah. You know, because again, again, to compare
these are 30 years old, these photos.
Yeah, and so now, like I said, go back to Future Primitive, which is 10 years earlier than that.
Yeah.
You know, that's 84, 85. This girl looks super familiar to me, but you look way younger than you do in the other ones. Yeah. And this is clearly Washington Square Park.
Yeah.
You're wearing some Sambas, it looks like.
But these are like knockoff Sambas.
Oh, wow.
I feel like I got those, like, there's probably like 4 stripes on them.
Yeah.
Or something, but they're not.
Well, that's the K-Swiss, okay.
Like,
maybe there's 5 stripes.
It was kind of like how you would try to find like shell toes.
Yeah.
They weren't actual shell
toes.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell that these are kind of like, maybe it's even this part. I don't know what it is, but, or maybe that.
I mean, nobody had money back then, so you just tried, and I probably had to trade something to get this Sal Barbier shirt.
Yeah,
you know, like,
and look at the fucking, again.
Yeah, and, but yeah, this girl was Simone, was her name, and then...
Is she film? Is this?
No, this is just her.
Yeah.
And then, so her best friend at this time was maybe named like Doreen.
Okay.
And she dated Ryan Carney.
Okay, got you.
And she,
are these Jersey? Are they Jersey girls or?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe like Tenafly or something.
Yeah.
I want to say definitely Tenafly.
Which is not New Jersey. No, I'm kidding.
We almost got jumped in Tenafly.
Right.
And then she dated this kid. He was a bald-headed, like shaved-headed kid, maybe from like Harrison or something.
Okay.
And he was like more music.
Yeah.
They were very much like Maxwell's Hoboken.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Like
Riot
Girl.
Yeah.
Early
alternative college radio, whatever.
And so like clearly, I'm like pretty intimidated by this whole thing. Like, you know, she starts giving attitude, and I'm like trying to.
What were you guys doing at this photograph? Were you just chatting her up, or?
No, she was dating my friend.
Okay.
And then Larry's like, oh, just
all right.
So
full mom kit back there, which is.
I mean, this lady has like a banjo.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But this would just be your typical like Saturday
at
Washington
totally.
Square Park.
Totally.
But this might be.
Yeah, fucking.
Either like I had like a little bit of a growth spurt or went through puberty like pretty quickly around this period, or this is. I think Larry has one other photo of me that's like maybe predates this. This might be one of the earliest photos.
Okay, gotcha.
When I first met Larry.
Now, is this is probably pre-Banks contest, yeah?
Probably, because that's Banks contest, and I already look a little older.
Yeah.
Where I'm drinking a beer.
Yeah, for sure.
But I know I'm 14 in that photo.
Yeah.
This photo, I might be closer to 13.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. All right, here we go. This is in front of Supreme again. This looks like, you know whose car this looks like? Which it might not be, but this looks like, oh God, I'm spacing on his damn name. Anyhow, doesn't matter. N.A., Joey Alvarez, these two guys grew up skating together, both Sunset Park. This is Supreme would be right here.
Yeah.
Gas station. That's crazy.
And then definitely in their first kind of like Thomas Campbell's Supreme video,
the hydrant
are ollieing
that
over
hydrant. That hydrant was big too. Harold has a photograph ollieing over it, and it was weird because there was only a tiny little bump to it, and it was like that. Yeah, crazy. I wonder what Rose is though.
Is it maybe a wine store?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, this dude again. This is the same time period.
This is the same kind of off day. I mean, there were so many kids that looked like that. Totally. But I couldn't tell you specifically who that is.
And you know what? To be honest, if he had rollerblades on.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. This is a good one. So when I saw this, I was like, oh shit. Brian Kraft, Brian Smith.
Right.
And
Joey
Surreal. Yeah. Crazy. And
in the EPMD shirt.
I mean, that is next level shit right there, which is super dope.
Did Hayes design that logo? I think he did.
It wouldn't surprise me. But man, when I saw this, for a second there, I was like, so you remember when there was another Brian Smith down in Philly?
Maybe.
And
I probably thought they were the same.
He moved to Philly, or maybe I'm screwing.
Did he like grind this double kink rail?
Yes.
In the Eastern Exposure?
Yes, in Philadelphia. And he was kind of like, he was on his way to, because that was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And I want to say that there was another Brian Smith, and they would kind of get confused, but maybe I'm just confusing this in general.
I also think, is there footage of him doing like a pop shove it to grind down a rail?
Yeah. Yeah. He was good skateboarder. I don't know where he is these days. Kraft is married to Kurt Vonnegut's granddaughter, and they build high-end furniture. Kraft is also, if you watch my 411, whatever the hell that thing was called, I forget what it's called. It came out in issue 13.
It's like a checkout.
Yeah, checkout. I forget the name of it, but Kraft is in the background with me in front of the clock down there on Water Street.
Yeah.
As is Brian Macco, and my brother, which is crazy. They're all in the background, and that was full. Like those things were terrible because you had to like sit there and talk like.
My sponsor.
Yeah. Hamilton and Javier in a newly opened Supreme. There's a baby right there. What the?
That's, I want to say Shady's kid.
Oh, Shady's kid. All right. Look at Hamilton's shirt. That's the first kind of first wave zoo shirts.
Yeah, I mean, I think back then, what did you have? You had like Zoo York Deluxe, and then maybe like
in Supreme too.
Yeah,
there was very few. Yeah, Girl maybe.
Yeah, there wasn't that many brands.
Yeah.
So
there were, but it was just like the accepted kind of like you weren't gonna have.
Wearing the Airwalks
too. Which
I
is maybe
know what the fuck Hobbs wearing.
Yeah.
It looked like some Morels or something.
Yeah. Oh, what's up?
I'm Rebecca Shea. I'm Charlie.
Oh yeah! Wow.
Yeah.
Speak of the devil.
This is Kaya.
Yeah. Oh wow. I haven't seen you in a long time. That's crazy.
Rebecca Shea.
That's crazy. So I was.
Charlie says hello.
Oh, yeah, we were just talking about Charlie like maybe 10 minutes ago. I mean, and it's hard not to talk about Charlie in this whole context of all of these photographs because Charlie, in many respects, is responsible for introducing me to this whole like kind of scene. All right, so now we're on to this photograph, which is incredible. And you mentioned that this is a 60/40 board. This is Stephen Callis.
No, this is ATM Click.
I'm sorry, ATM Click. Right. Sorry. That's pre-60/40 with Mark. Stephen Callis, gold teeth. You know, right out of the gate, it's like no one.
Yeah.
No one. This is Ducky, legendary New York skateboarder. In many respects, you know, people used to call him the Gons of New York City because just of the way he did things. You could also see like his board is properly nose slid out, which is super sick. Jamie Story behind him. Me right here.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
Dan Zimmer. And this is Jim Lynch, also a Nimbus rider and graffiti writer. I don't want to give his graffiti moniker away because he's very active, very celebrated dude too in the graffiti world. But also, this is a crazy one. So when you watch Plan B, Pat Duffy's part, when Pat goes off the hip and grinds the rail and then goes down the rail, Jim and Matt O'Brien are sitting up against the wall in the background of that clip. And those two dudes, along with, I want to say, Ryan Hickey, and possibly somebody else, and maybe it's not Ryan Hickey, but there's definitely a third person. Maybe it's Justin. Maybe it's Justin. They drive out to California.
Right.
And somehow they end up at that school. It's, I think, in Escondido. I forget the name of the school. Yeah. But somehow they're there that day that Mike Ternasky films Pat Duffy grind that rail. Wow. And you could, if you watch the footage, you see Jim and Matt O'Brien sitting up against the wall in the background.
Well, you know, so there's that famous Tobin Yelland photo of the board smashing the windshield.
Yes.
So I was talking to Tobin about that photo. That's Cory Chrysler's car.
Okay.
And I know Justin is in the background of that photo and Jamie's Story.
Oh, so maybe it was Jamie's Story that possibly...
I don't know, but
yeah.
I think, because there was probably like a trip to California at some point, and then after Kids was made, we all went to SF and LA. There was like an ASR trade show in Long Beach.
Yeah.
And then went up to SF. So I'm not sure what time period that Tobin photo is, but I love that photo. And then he was like, oh, you know, the people in this photo, they can't see their faces.
Right. Is there somebody that's right in the forefront of that photo, or is it just the board smashing the windshield?
Just the board smashing the windshield.
Similarly, I took a trip in '95 out to SF with Brian.
Yeah.
And Brian and I took a Greyhound bus down to LA, and we went to the chocolate premiere. Brian and I, and it was like, dude, I want to say the bus ride was like from SF to LA was like either 9 hours. Yeah. It was like a 5-hour drive or a 4-hour drive, but on a bus it was like add 6 hours to that.
Well, it's incredible that around this time people started taking the bus to LA or vice versa.
Yeah.
Like we were like, yeah, it's 3 days on the Greyhound.
Yeah. Well, I flew to SF, and then we took the bus down to LA. There's no way in hell you could get me to take a bus out to out to
people
California.
People were doing it because you could do it for $65.
Also, you know, interestingly, the first time I ever went to SF, Matt Twilliger and I got on an airplane. We didn't know where we were staying.
Yeah.
We met a guy on the flight who we were talking to. This is 94, 95. We met a guy on the flight. He's like, oh, where are you guys going? Oh, we're going to San Francisco. Where are you going to stay? We don't know. He's like, I'll give you a ride into the city from SFO. He gives us a ride, drops us off at Market Street, and we just skate down Market. We don't even know. We don't even have a map.
Yeah.
We've never even been there. He's like, go down here, you'll get to the Embarcadero. Take Market all the way down. We go down the Embarcadero, down Market all the way to the Embarcadero. I meet Pat Washington. Well, actually, we skated around Embarcadero, and the volleyball courts were set up. So EMB was unskateable to a certain extent. People hanging out. Somebody mentions like, oh, Black Rock's around the street, Brown Marble's around the corner, down the street around the corner. We go to Brown Marble. Greg Hunt and Mike York are sitting there. I start talking to them, you know, I'm like, oh, you know, blah, 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 this and that. I think might have been wearing a zoo shirt or riding a zoo board. We start talking. I'm like, oh yeah, I ride for Zoo. You know, he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He's like, go back to Embarcadero and ask Pat Washington if you could stay at his house.
Yeah.
Like, it was getting dark, and we did not have a place to stay. And then Pat's like, oh yeah, come stay with me. We stayed in the Tenderloin. We stayed there for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. Just like fully no script, no reservations anywhere. No, we didn't even know what the hell we were doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, different times, but you know, people still do it, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, this dude, again, same kind of time period as this. We don't know who this is. He looks like he could be like, I mean, he's got like very kind of like now film, almost like, who's the guy that was in that Terminator movie? What's that? Edward something.
Edward
Furlong. Yeah, he's got like Edward Furlong vibes, mixed with like Jim Greco.
But it's like, you know, he seems like a pretty clean-cut kid.
Yeah.
You know, even like slight smile, thumbs
Sure.
up. Like nobody was doing that shit back then.
Yeah.
Nobody was on that positive kick.
Oh, there's a Heck tag. So Heck is a Jersey guy, skated, killed in a New York City subway tunnel by a train.
Doing graffiti. Yeah, crazy
little story. But him, Nose, and Sue, the graffiti writer Nose, and the NOSE and Sue, SUE, who's still around, had Jersey and Manhattan lower Manhattan completely tagged the gates. They had these big old tags across the gates, the roll down gates. This is a crazy one. This actually doesn't even look like, I said Central Park, but that doesn't look like Central Park.
Like these weird, this maybe is like San Francisco.
It might be San Francisco. In fact, I would say this is probably San Francisco, especially with Dune. But I know Dune came back and was at this contest at the Banks, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember seeing Dune sitting there with Coco.
Right.
And Coco and Dune are friends via the Jersey Connect, Union City Shut. Well, who this kid is, I mean, that's a crazy one. So.
Yeah. I mean, he has like a workshop sticker on his board.
Oh,
you can tell it's just like some kids skating flat ground and stuff.
That almost looks like a, oh yeah, that is a workshop sticker. Yeah, fascinating. The missing link. Okay, this, again, same thing, like kind of, maybe even Larry's like later projects, right?
No.
No, I'm saying this looks like a character out of maybe some of the later Larry stuff.
Or the early Tulsa stuff.
Or
like
the
this
early,
bolo tie thing and like, but
oh,
I wanna
right,
say, this is also Washington Square.
Definitely
Park,
Washington Square.
And I want to say that's Drake Jones's arm.
Okay.
So this is probably like the same day, because this is like a very similar photo to the Drake Jones in that.
Okay, so
other
Drake
kid.
is in the Washington Square fight scene in the film.
No.
He's not. Okay.
I don't think Drake's in the movie,
Right.
which is weird that he's in some of these photos.
Yeah.
But maybe, like, this is clearly like some kind of van or car or something.
Now I wonder, now this just goes back to that van that I pointed out being at the Banks for the
Right.
contest, but I think this even might, it's very close to Drake riding for Deluxe Real,
Yeah,
but I don't know how Drake, you know, Drake also has an SF connection.
yeah.
Aside from his upstate New York roots or whatever, I don't know, but I know it's much like Julian's like Santa Monica SF thing where he's either going back and forth or whatever.
Yeah.
But all right, so this is the Banks contest. Man, another eclectic kind of group of folks here, and again, we're talking like kind of rave-ish scene. I used to love these skating these planters. Yeah.
This might have been like
Post.
the aftermath
Yeah.
of the contest.
Yeah.
And I know this kid's wearing a fucked up Blinds kid.
Yeah, for certain.
shirt.
There's the Quartz building.
No, I was gonna say maybe that's Lance Dodge, but I
No.
don't think so.
Oh, that's Rossetti, Eric Rossetti. If I'm not mistaken, that's
But
Eric.
so do you remember, so the fight happens, right?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, again, Dave Schubert got all the good footage. The fight spills into the street. A bus stops. Kids start tagging the hell out of the bus.
Yep.
And Mickey Reyes
Mickey breaks
up
up the fight. Yeah.
And he's like, what are y'all doing? We're all human beings or something. And then they just throw the DJ kid into the back of a random car. And they were like, get this kid the fuck out of here.
What
Because-
did the DJ kid have to do with the fight? Was he the one?
So what I remember is a skater. It was like Vinny got some DJ to like DJ the event.
Yeah.
And he was wearing like a gold necklace. And the skater's like, run your shit. I want the necklace.
Wow.
And the DJ was like, nah, fuck that. We can fight. And I want to say this. For some reason, the DJ kid had like a skate key in his hand and punched the skater and cut open his head. And once all the other skaters saw that, they jumped the DJ.
Yeah.
But it basically turned into the same thing as killing the rat, where all these kids were like
Sure.
running around throwing boards.
Sure.
And then Mickey kind of broke
Well-
it up and threw the kid in the back of the car and was like, get this kid to a hospital.
And there's definitely footage of somebody like smacking the dude with the board.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'd always thought that was, what's his face? Kyle, no? Wasn't Kyle somewhere involved in that whole thing? Okay. You know, whatever, yeah.
Which, you know, again, it goes back to like the run your shit.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
Everybody got a board stolen.
Totally.
Or whatever. It was just like, depended if it was your day or not.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
Like if those
Totally.
dudes wanted to turn on you,
Totally.
no problem. Like, let me
Yeah.
try your board.
Yeah. See you later.
But yeah, so it's funny that the DJ kid was just defending himself, but he was the outlier.
Yeah.
Kyle knew everybody.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So, and then weirdly, I don't know how this happened, but when the kid split his head open, somebody like maybe Mickey put like an independent shirt, wrapped
around
his head,
yeah.
and then Larry got that shirt, and it was like hanging in his loft forever.
I wonder if that shirt still exists.
I think it does.
Oh my God,
But it's
that's
like blood
insane.
stained.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I think for Larry being a documentarian, like that fight, he's like, it's fucking gold.
Yeah.
You know, like these kids, he talks about it in this interview with Tobin, where he's like, it's weird, like 15 minutes before the rat, and 15 minutes after the rat, and 15 minutes before the fight, and 15 minutes after. He's like, these kids are so innocent, and they're just like hanging out riding skateboards, but like once something clicks, they turn into savages.
Mentality. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Fascinating. Jamal again. He had the cover of Transworld. You remember that?
Yeah. Who was I just talking to? He said he rolled up on somebody. Who was it? And he's like, I'm Jamal. I had the cover of Transfer. But this is recently.
Yeah.
No, somebody was talking to somebody. There was like a bike accident.
Okay.
And the guy got off the bike and they were like skating or something. He's like, I'm Jamal. I had the cover of Transfer.
Yeah.
Like, are you okay? Like, a bike accident. But
Crazy.
I was like, oh, he's a legend.
Yeah.
I was like, and
for certain.
He always kind of like dressed like this. He
Totally.
always had like this weird kind of like pimpy vibe.
Totally.
Which wasn't really a thing in skating to dress like this.
Not at all. And I wonder where it comes from.
You would see this more from like the sort of Cory Chrysler.
Totally.
Like
I mean, this alone, this was unheard of in New York. The top button.
Yeah.
And that hat.
And the fedora.
Yeah.
The band.
He almost looks like something out of Harlem from the 40s.
Yeah.
You know?
But he always had that same swagger.
Yeah.
Like he was always kind of like.
I guess while we're talking about Jamal, Quim is also another legendary New York City skateboarder. Those guys, the both of them together, man, is for certain.
But now Jamal is a writer.
Yes.
By Living Room Johnston.
Yeah.
And you can find his books pretty easily.
Yeah. And super into fingerboards.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Dude, crazy. He like posts more fingerboard footage than he does of him, talking about. Yeah, next level. Yeah. Anyhow, Joey Alvarez, incredible photograph.
Yeah.
Taken aback by this one. Again, just KSA, that was Seno's crew. They were all skateboarders.
But yeah, even like the fresh fade and the mustache.
Yeah, dude, the fade alone is, that's like, This one, don't know. This girl looks kind of familiar. Don't know who this is.
Yeah.
This guy, I remember him. He looks like almost like Where's Waldo. Here's a Sev, part of that Sev outline. Like, this is April, so the trees don't have leaves on them yet, but there's sweatshirts growing out of them. Here's you drinking a beer at age, 14?
14, yeah. Old English.
Old English, in a can.
So I want to say, I remember Vinny Raffa handing out 40s.
Okay.
So I don't know where I got this beer. Mm-hmm. But you remember, like, Vinny Raffa was kind of like a showman.
For certain.
He was almost like a wrestling promoter.
P.T. Barnum /
And so I think he
certain.
came to this contest in like a shitty beater car and like had a trunk full of 40s, and he was like, hey, here's some stickers and some shirts and some 40s.
Now we should also point out that going back to the idea of Larry Clark being a 50-year-old man that was not a skateboarder at this contest, Vinny Raffa also kind of not looking like a skateboarder, definitely way advanced in age, ringleader of like God knows what, had a brand called Dead Industries, but it's like you don't skate and you don't look like a skateboarder, but you have a skateboard company. But this is also now kind of like in the realm of Rocco, which is kind of,
very much like Rocco, like a poor man's Rocco.
Yeah, for certain. And also brilliantly when he started Dead End, ended up calling it Dead Industries, which I was like, Dead End is kind of crazy, but Dead End, that's kind of brilliant, like I thought it was funny.
I want to say, wasn't he riffing on like Shepard Fairey stuff back then with Vinny Raffa Has a Posse?
Sure.
And like,
this
is probably also like prime Andre the Giant Has a Posse.
Oh,
like
for certain.
Beginning of Shepard
Fairey. For certain. This one, man, it's like, I always see, when I see people shooting photographs in the crowd, I'm always like, I want to see that photograph.
Yeah.
But look at these wheels, and look at these boards. I mean, this is insane. That looks like, I don't know if that's
like
a
Eddie
Mike
Murphy
Tyson
or something.
Yeah, some shit. What is this shirt?
I have no idea.
God, it's so sick.
But it's funny because I've never I've seen all these photographs a lot, but I've never really investigated them the way I'm like investigating them with you, with like the half cabs and
Force? Those are...
Oh yeah, like a Nike Air Force.
This almost looks like Jim Greco.
Yeah, well that's the kid in the Jason Lee shirt.
Oh, right, okay, got you. Yeah. I wonder if Greco was at this contest. Because Greco would have been maybe rolling with the Gagne crew. And I also point out that Jim Gagne rode for Shut. Oh. And he was kind of like that whole...
You know what's crazy though? Like this photo of you and Justin and Gio and Tony.
Yeah.
People recognize Jim Gagne from his back.
Totally. Well, I guess I'll also point this out, and we didn't talk about this, but yes, this is Tony
De Silva,
whose mom owned the playground.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, his mom owned the playground. Tony ends up riding for Foundation later on in his like career. Gio is the first manager of Supreme along with Matt McGrath.
Yeah.
Right? When Supreme opens, Gio, and also Nimbus alumni, team rider, Justin Nimbus team rider. When I first saw this photograph, I thought that was Matt Reason.
Oh,
There's a little bit of Matt Reason, but for some reason I thought to myself, would Matt Reason dye his hair like that? Probably, but you could kind of tell it's not Matt Reason, but it definitely looks like a side profile of Matt Reason. But then it clicked on me. I was like, that's Jim Gagnon.
Which is weird that there wasn't much of a Philly presence.
Right.
There's no Ricky Iola, no Serge.
Although there is a classic photograph a little bit later with Serge, Bam, and Matt Reason, I think, sitting on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
But this might be like more towards when Zeus starts, and then those guys have more of a reason.
And Bam is probably like 13, 14.
Very small.
Yeah.
Very small. And the crazy thing about Bam, because now you know Bam as Bam,
yeah.
But when you see him as a little kid, he's like, again, it's like Quim, Javier, like little, tiny.
Yeah, I mean, I met Bam at Cheapskates in Pennsylvania when we were probably 12 years old or something, you know, and it was such a small world.
Yeah.
It didn't matter where you're from. You're like,
totally.
You live in Westchester. I'll probably only see you once a year.
Yeah.
And then when Bam, I guess was doing CKY, after I did the kids, I moved to London for a year. And
wait. How and why?
I didn't like being in New York. It was too weird.
But who did you know in London that you're like, I'm gonna just move to London?
I didn't know anybody. But I worked at Premiere, I saved up some money, and then I went and just stayed in a youth hostel.
No shit.
And I knew about Slam City because of Thrasher.
Yeah.
So I walked into Slam City, and I was like, hey, does anyone want to go skate tonight?
Yeah.
And I met this guy, Seth Curtis.
Yeah.
Who would become my roommate.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I have a room available in Stockwell.
Yeah.
I said, sure. But then Bam, and Mike Maldonado, and Kerry Getz wasn't even sponsored yet. They came and stayed with us in London for a long time.
Why were they out there? Was Bam and Mike riding for Toy Machine?
I think so. Okay. Kerry wasn't on.
Still not on. Okay.
I think they were just curious.
Yeah.
They're like, let's go see. And so, because me and Bam knew each other from just being East Coast skaters.
Yeah.
I was like their connection.
That's crazy. So just to kind of go full circle, right as we started, I talked about Phil Frost having that show here. Phil also, do you remember, had a famous painting on Slam City's wall? Yeah. Which remained there for a very long time.
That was the era I lived there.
Yeah. And Rough Trade, I believe, was in the basement.
Yeah, which I think of all the records I could have bought.
Yeah. Jacob Sawyer and Seth. Yeah. All right, this row, when I walked in here, I was like, who the hell is this kid? And this is an interesting one. So the other day, I saw my friend post a picture of this kid, and it had an Instagram tag on it. And this kid's name, I believe, is Andy. And my friend said, oh, he's a Long Island guy. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, I don't remember him. But man, I mean, look, his eyebrows, or eyebrow, very interesting looking kid. Almost looks like, could probably have been tapped for like a Calvin Klein, sort of thing. But I believe this kid's name, excuse me. So this kid's name is Andy. And I looked at this shit and I was like, oh, yeah. So I started having this conversation with my friend, and you know what my friend says to me? This is the dude that killed the rat.
Oh, but look, he looks like an angel.
Yes. So I was like, now, if you go back to that rat scene, it's a mob scene, but apparently this is the guy. Now, I don't want to throw this guy under the bus as being like, some kind of, But anyhow, I mean, different times, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But that's what my friend said. He's like, yeah, he said, this is the dude that killed the rat.
But if you look at him here, he almost just looks like a young Leonardo DiCaprio.
Totally.
Like angelic.
Totally. Totally insane. Yeah. And then there's that Toyota van wagon back there, and yeah.
And then you remember there was the picture of Poncho with the rat and Big Brother, and where he's like posing with the dead rat.
Which is crazy. There's no pictures of Poncho here.
Yeah, I mean Poncho was definitely around all this. You know, obviously he's in that photo.
Yeah.
But
cool.
Maybe he's just out of frame.
Yeah. But Poncho. And then he had cover of Big Brother, which was next level kind of thing. Like, yeah.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to Leigh about this show.
Wait, hold on. For those who don't know, Leigh is also
Leigh Peterson.
Leigh Peterson from 101.
And we were talking about Big Brother. And he is like, you know, I helped lay out a lot of those issues because I was living with Nodis at the time. And so it's just funny, small world. Me and Leigh are going to do a talk here.
You're what?
We're going to do a talk.
Oh, nice.
And just kind of like...
So is he in New York?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Why did he change his name? What was the deal with that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Just
whatever.
Just like I'm not a skater anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Super fascinating. Man, what a crazy,
But
when I found out about the connection between the Leigh being Leigh Peterson, I was like, oh, that's super interesting. Like,
yeah,
random.
and you know, weirdly, because he was on 101, he hung out with like a lot of the world dudes.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, I remember hanging out with Colin. And
Yeah.
And I think because he was such an outlier in skating, his style was so crazy.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You forget how like cool 101 was.
Yeah.
And like, oh yeah, like maybe he didn't have the best parts, but he was around all the best guys.
Dude, you could have like sucked, and if you were, you know, if you were in that crew, it was being like knighted. You know, you were like just part of that. Yeah, you were part of the thing. Also interesting, Adam McNatt rode for 101.
Oh yeah.
And Andy Stone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that was in a pretty eclectic group of a team back then too. Obviously, Eric Koston was light years ahead of everybody, but super.
But Adam McNatt back then was incredible. Ronnie
Totally
Bertino
incredible. Yeah. Well, Ronnie Bertino rode for Blind.
Right.
And
but
then,
I'm thinking of like Think era Ronnie Bertino.
Oh yeah.
With that, is that Slam song in the? Is it called Think Crime? Was the video with Mike Kepper?
Yeah. With
that
Kepper,
Ronnie Bertino. I think it's The Ender.
Yeah.
And he's doing all kinds of crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
But like Adam McNatt, but like Powell, you can tell he's pretty good.
Yeah.
But 101, he just takes it, and then I think doesn't he skate to Groove Is in the Heart?
Yes.
That part's fucking incredible.
Yeah, totally. All right, cool. Appreciate it. This is probably the most comprehensive. I mean, it's you know, the only other way you would get a more comprehensive kind of walkthrough is maybe Larry's kind of like, you know.
No, I think between you and me, we probably know more than Larry.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious because I never really met Larry. I will say, you know, I saw him in that pharmacy down the block here in Tribeca, like at the Triangle there.
Yeah.
And this was like maybe even many years after this, but I remember just turning the corner. I don't even know what the fuck I was in that pharmacy for, maybe buying a Band-Aid or some shit. I turned the corner and Larry's house lived up the street, and I turned the corner and there's Larry, and I was just like, you know, just like, I didn't know what to say to him, you know, because it's like, because myself, I was like, what are you? I didn't know about Tulsa. I knew a little bit because of like the, you know, after the film came out, you get the whole like kind of like, oh, well, he did this book. But back then it was like, whatever, you know, it wasn't like as, it was revered, but now you understand the context and, you know, the Nan Goldens and what, you know, what have you. But, you know.
But when you're a teenage kid.
You're just like, So I was like, it was interesting. And I don't think I've ever seen him ever since, but I do remember this.
Oh, I got something to show you.
Because I knew for some, maybe I went to Larry's house with Peter Bisi one day, or somehow I went to Larry's house, and after the fact that I found out where he lived, sometimes I would, if I was skating down around that zone, I would be like, hey, check this out. And I would take my friends or whoever I was with up to Larry's like buzzer, and I would be like, and it said Larry Clark, and I was like, hey, check this out. You know, just like a weird little thing.
So let me show you this thing, which isn't in the show, but I thought it was interesting enough to get.
You're gonna show me the board?
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane.
You looked at it already.
I did, I mean.
So this is a board Larry made at that time. He signed the truck, which is crazy.
Yeah.
In like a thin Sharpie, so it's amazing that it even exists. But this is 92. But
I mean, dude, this should be in a museum, not just sitting in the bathroom of this
I didn't know how to incorporate it into the show, but I knew it was worth having. But
so I have to admit, when I first saw this, I didn't have my glasses on, and I thought, oh, this is an Ed Templeton.
Yeah.
But it's not.
I mean, it also kind of looks like if Man Ray tried to make a
Absolutely. As you look now, for certain.
But yeah, and then, back then, Larry collected boards because art was probably $10,000.
Yeah.
Skateboard's $65
or
whatever. So Larry had all the blind, fucked up blind kids. He had crazy boards. And somebody bought them all at one point.
Somebody.
Yeah.
Do you know who it is? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you off camera just because I don't want people bothering this guy. But so we might pull a selection of boards and just kind of like have them on.
Now the person that bought them still has them. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming those are things that you don't really like.
Yeah, and only people who would know.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that Coco Santiago board, that's sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't gone through the boards, but I know there's 4 boxes of boards. And
this is like, to the collector world, this is like probably an unseen stash of stuff, or unless the new owner has put them on display.
No, I think they're just under his bed.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, Larry was just like buying boards and like stacking them on the wall, like not really. He's like a bit of a hoarder.
Yeah.
So when he gets into things, he buys a lot of it.
It's crazy for him.
They were never even set up.
It's crazy for him because for us being skateboarders, that was not something you bought and held onto. That was something you bought, set up, destroyed, threw in the, wherever, in the trash or in your closet, and then whatever. But it's interesting how a non-skateboarder saw a skateboard as an object, especially Larry seeing it as a piece of art.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for any other collector out there to preserve skateboards way back when.
Yeah, I think it was like being attracted to a record because of its cover.
Yeah.
You're like, this is intriguing, I want to know more.
Super fascinating.
But yes, we might do an installation.
I mean, that would be incredible.
For the talk.
Yeah. Oh, so when is the talk?
We're making a book too.
Yeah.
Like a little zine. So we have to find out when the zine will be finished.
Yeah.
The show ends on February 15th.
Yeah.
So it will happen before then.
Yeah,
but
great.
Probably first week of February.
Awesome. Dude, thank you again.
Yeah.
Totally appreciate it. Yeah. All right, cool. See you later.